Well, welcome back to the It's Just Coffee podcast with myself. I'm Kirk Pearson.
I'm Rohan Cook.
And together we are
It's Just Coffee.
Today we have an absolute fucking treat for you all.
Yeah.
An absolute delightful treat. Today's guest is none other than Nolan Hirte. Is that how I say it? Nolan Hirte, founder and CEO, would you call yourself, of Proud Mary Coffee Roasters in Australia and the US. So welcome.
Thanks, guys.
How does it feel to be back in Australia?
It's really nice. There's lots of things that I missed about Australia, so I'm enjoying the moments that I'm here. You know, it's cool.
And the first thing just off the bat that I've noticed as you both come in is you guys have clearly been hanging out, and it looks like you've been drinking a lot of coffee because you're handling it a bit better. But Kirk, you were looking jittery. You're looking sweaty. You look like you're coming off a 5-day bender.
I am. No, because I met Nolan to start my day, right? I was meeting Nolan at 10 at my cafe. I made a brief stop at Patricia Coffee Brewers in the city, had a couple of coffees there. I had a couple of coffees at our cafe. And then I had 3 or 4 coffees at Proud Mary, or Auntie Peg's rather. And right now I am peaking, like absolutely peaking.
Too much coffee.
Yeah. I've not felt this way in quite some time. Like I am motor mouthing today. I will motor mouth throughout this podcast. So you all have that to look forward to, and I have you to thank for it.
I don't reckon I've done that since my early days of being a barista where you're just knocking off like 10 coffees within a couple hour period. I couldn't do it anymore.
Well, the irony of this is I was explaining to some people the other day, I don't really get that caffeinated anymore. I just don't get a headache because I need coffee to survive. But today's like a bit of an exception. Is there extra caffeine in those coffees? I don't know.
Just extra love in those coffees. No, extra caffeine, yeah.
Yeah, and it's the kind of coffee that you can't really say no to. What do we have? So we had the Misty Mountain Geisha from Longboard, a Mount Tatumas wash geisha. Shout out to Rosso Coffee Roasters there, so Colin David. And then what was the last one?
Don Benji Geisha from Lost Origin.
Lost Origin. Yep. Have you had Lost Origin before, Rohan? Far out. These guys are
incredible,
doing some absolutely amazing stuff. We're going to start today with the coffee news. So if you guys are ready.
Yeah, I've got a bit of coffee news to kick us off with as well. So play the song.
Oh, wrong one. No, again, wrong one.
Sorry, guys. Liam isn't here today.
Isn't here. I'm on the panel today.
Our producer on the pad isn't here.
I'm sure this is the one.
It'd be so good if it was just like... It's like, oh, sorry. That's the fart sound effect. My coffee news coming in first. Nolan, I'll just catch you up if you're not following along with the pod here. So Kirk likes to have a lot of goes at me because, I said a few things about Italy. I love Italy, but there was a few things that I had issue with, espresso, a few other little things that I was like, maybe we could talk about this. And then Kirk has like to come out and say that he is actually 6.25% Italian because of a great-great-grandfather.
Might even be more.
Once removed. And my coffee news is that we've got the ancestry test right here. The proof is literally going to be in the pudding, and today you are the pudding. So we're not going to whip this out yet. In the coffee break, Kirk and I are going to sit down, get out this ancestry test. We'll get your DNA. We'll get you slobbering on it, whatever you have to do.
Is that how you do it?
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't even opened it yet. This is still fresh in the box. So we're going to find that out. And then I'm thinking end of year, maybe Christmas podcast, when we do it live, we finally reveal, is Kirk really Italian?
Ooh. What do you reckon, what else do you reckon my mix could be? I think there's a bit of Scottish in there.
With all your accents, there's got to be some South African, right?
There could be some South African. I can't guarantee that there's not, quite frankly. I cannot. So full disclosure, I might be part South African. But if you're ready for the actual coffee news.
Real news. Right, well, that was real news.
Yeah. Well, that was good news. Breaking news, in fact. There is a new world record for coffee price. So I'm going to credit the article to Perfect Daily Grind here, who have written a story about it. But the Lamastus family, so people you would know well, you buy a fair bit of coffee of, they've set a new world record for a coffee price, which equates to $13,518 for a kilo of honey-processed Alita Aguacatillo geisha. So,
mate, wait till the news, 7 News get a hold on that. They're worried about $6.50 lattes.
They're going to go into meltdown. $13,500 US. So that's what, probably 20K Australian. So what would you need to charge for a cup cost price? It'd be like $500 Australian, wouldn't it?
Right up there for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it would probably cost you, close to $200, maybe $250 a cup to put that on the table.
Does anyone does anyone in Australia have it?
No, I don't know. I think it was a South Korean company that bought that coffee, to be honest.
Okay. That would have been a good pod, the $500 cup.
When, Nolan, question to you first is, when there's a lot that's expensive, what is the size of it? Like, how much of that coffee do you reckon there'd actually be?
That's the interesting thing about these high prices. They're often not lots, which is kind of a good thing because that price tag, it gets very expensive very quick. And like example would be Best of Panama, the winning lot, equivalent of £100. And so at $1,500 a pound, you're suddenly like, $250,000 US.
Yeah.
It's a big chunk of change. And Japan, Sasa Coffee, for example, are pretty happy to throw down and buy that and take the risk on buying that and sometimes share it out with friends,
Do you think there's like more and more sort of rich folks, like people that are just obscenely rich that actually, have a bit of an interest in buying these coffees when they come out? Or is it like, what type of, you've bought lots similar, we'll elaborate more on that later, but like what kind of clientele wants these coffees?
Funny thing is, I think there are people out there that want experiences, that want to be able to spend their money on something that they would like to enjoy, and often there isn't the opportunity to do it. And so I feel like more often than not, we're like, oh, well, there's not a market for that, or no one's ready for that, but no one's offering it also. And when it is offered, it's surprising who comes out and actually is willing to throw down and spend money on it. And when we've done, the $200 cup in Australia was $150 in the US, there was a real range of people that kind of came to explore that.
Eddie, you had the, kind of well-known TikToker that, even came in. What a hook, the $200 cup.
I was there too, and I kind of like met the guy, and I didn't know who he was at the time, but there was a vibe for sure, like he was trying to keep it under the radar, don't get involved,
Yeah, look him up if you don't know. He does a lot of videos where he's like, and you can't change my mind, I think is like his hook.
Oh, Testhetics.
Yeah, Testhetics.
Oh, he did it.
Yeah. So he came and had the Proud Mary coffee. Yeah.
Yeah. And what did he think? Was he a bit of a savage about it?
I think it followed suit to most of the content that you'd find from him, where it was like, you can't change my mind on that.
Yeah. I don't think he's, regardless of what he experienced there, that character is never going to walk away going like, that was worth every penny and I love it.
Yeah. I mean, that referencing that article that went around, that was close to 1 billion views that we got on that. That went crazy, and that was more than Elon Musk throwing a rock through the Cybertruck window. But it had to do because it was like also a genuine, real story, and it was kind of like shared really well. You often hear about these crazy high prices, but genuinely that deserved the accolades that it got, the price tag that it got. Not only was it delicious, but an auction format, and it was just really cool to see coffee at that caliber celebrated that well,
Because when people are getting upset with it, it's like anything that you're going to get in this world. It's like, is it the $5,000, $10,000 better than another cup? It's like, no, it might just be different or a little bit. But the thing is that supply, demand, and quality of it, it's like, that's what just drives it up. It's about the auctioning and like how badly people want it, not is it worth that $4,000? You can't put a number on the difference. No, it's just an experience, you know?
I think people sometimes need to remember that you don't actually need to buy it either.
Other people will buy it.
No, for sure. And I think the other piece that I think we forget to this is that we undervalue what we have with a lot of things. We don't value things properly. And to see coffee being valued that highly, it's not like we all need to now go buy that cup of coffee, but how cool that something that we love so much, being coffee, is getting appreciated to that level.
Yep.
It's really cool. And it opens up doors for other things.
Another thing I wanted to talk about just before we get into the pod is that Perfect Daily Grind. They have these titles for their articles that I see on Instagram all the time that, for whatever reason, just really piss me off. But it's actually
Clickbait.
that's the thing. Like, that's a sign the editor's doing a fantastic job of drawing you into the article, because the title of this one is "A New World Record Price for Geisha Isn't What the Coffee Industry Needs Right Now." I mean, what really does the coffee industry need right now? There's a Bible length document that should be made as to what the coffee industry needs right now. But your take on that?
I was interviewed for that article, and I put a lot of effort into explaining my position, and because it was very much like clickbait targeted at like disparity, and like it must be upsetting for all these other people that wish they could sell their coffee at these prices. And I really tried to kind of explain just how valuable it is for everyone that coffee gets celebrated to this level. It's not a bad thing; it's a good thing. But nothing that the honest and truth parts that were answered, nothing got included except for the bits that helped tell the story. And so it kind of just goes to show me that, elaborates that not always what you read or what you hear often is really giving you the full picture.
What an interesting choice, though. You think you'd want to split it into the two sides. It's like, if you have an opinion, follow that one and be like, however, coffee expert Nolan had the opinion that XYZ.
Sure. I mean, I had to stop myself from blowing up in the comments because I really felt like some of those things should be kind of included.
Well, feel free to blow up now.
Yeah, there's a good chance that'll happen.
Please.
Well, all right. Well, we could talk about this all day, and we'll touch on this again later in the pod. So.
But let's bring it down. We're starting to tense up a little bit, so we'll bring it down with a nice, easy one just to wheel us in. So for everyone listening, you're one of the most well-known coffee guys in Australia now, the world. What's your go-to coffee order?
Yeah, what's your coffee?
Definitely still loving filter coffee, pour over.
Yep.
Hard to beat, raw format, like keep it simple.
Do you like to go, are you someone who it's like, yes, you like trying all the different coffees and doing everything, or do you like getting into a bit of a routine where you're like, I'm really on this one coffee or these coffees for a couple of weeks or whatever? Or is it like something different every day?
I do like to mix it up. And I think maybe part of the reason we've gone so far down the rabbit hole as a coffee company, buying amazing coffees, is just a pure love for exploring what coffee can be and enjoying it, and drinking what might be the profit sometimes, to just really like make the most of that, Yeah,
it's an investment, we'll say, for the future,
I love it, yeah.
I think this has been an amazing day for me, getting to spend it with you, because we started at my cafe, then we went to Auntie Peg's, and now we're here. And Nolan and I actually met about 10 years ago. And this is when I first got into coffee, and I had a single origin at the cafe I was working at that I was really excited about to serve. And the off chance, I served it to one of our customers whose name was Dick. And so I said, "Oh, do you like black coffee?" And he just glared back at me and said, "Do you like black coffee?" I was like, "Well, yeah, I'm offering one to you." Anyway, so on my day off, and this is an incredibly generous act of him, on my day off, he actually took me to visit one of his clients who he helped supply machines to, which was Nolan. And so, back in those days, you're a very, very busy guy back then, even still. And we got to sit down, have the private experience with Nolan, try the best of the best coffees that Auntie Peg's had at the time. And that's how we met. And then, fast forward 10 years, from then, here we are now, and I get to interview. It's been an absolutely fantastic day.
Awesome.
So, sorry.
I was just going to say, well, we could have, sliding doors kind of moment. We could have been besties, because I remember back in my early days when I was living out in Surrey Hills and working at a little place called Snow Pony. I believe Jets worked for you back then. Yeah. And she tried to pull me over to Proudies, and I was hi, Jets, how you doing?
We love you, Jets.
Yeah. And I at the time I was like, oh my God, I want to work at Proudies. Like, what a name, like all that kind of stuff. But I think I was like borrowing my brother's car, and it was like a half-hour like trek, 40-minute bike ride, whatever. I was like, I can't right now. And then another guy at our cafe, she went, okay, cool. Anyway, next guy, went to the next guy in the cafe and took him. I then ended up at 3 Bags, but sliding doors, what could have been if I was at Proudies,
Yeah.
Did you start 3 Bags? Or was that someone else?
No, that's Nathan Tolan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
To me, the next question is for me. Perfect. So what was the moment that you knew that you wanted a career in coffee? Like when you were like, this is it, I'm doing it.
I mean, been 26 years now. I wanted to go to art school. I actually wanted to, that was kind of the dream, was to, out of school, go to art school and be a successful artist. And I put together this folio to apply for art school. I did like life drawing classes and extracurricular kind of classes to apply for it, and put together a killer folio. And the day came to submit it, to apply, and something kind of came over me. I'm like, I don't think I can do this. I think if I'm going to be any good as an artist, actually I need to experience life more and the world more and travel more and have some perspective to put into the art. And then I'm like, well, how am I going to afford to travel the world? And I'm like, well, maybe hospitality is everywhere. Maybe I could kind of like look into hospitality. And this is at the time I was living in New Zealand and in Ash Vegas. And I ended up applying to a hospitality class in Christchurch to study hospitality. And that meant chopping off my long dreadlocks at the time.
Ooh, damn.
And like cleaning up my act and putting like a suit and tie on. And I took it really seriously and like went 110% into that class. At the end of it, we had to do this work experience trial at a cafe or a restaurant. And I got a trial at a place called Cafe Roma in Christchurch. And they were using Supreme coffee at the time, like 1997.
Checks out.
And I was washing dishes. I made sure I washed them faster than anyone else. Got me turbo, got a job. And then I was learning how to make coffee for myself every day. And one day the owner came in and was like, hey, Nolan, if you want, you can make this coffee for the customer. Okay. And all the creative juices just started flying. I got really excited by the idea of making this amazing cup of coffee and pulled the best shot that I could, textured the milk the best I could, send it out to the table. And I'm watching, and the lady gets a cup and has a sip. Kind of like rolls back into her chair, big sigh. And it just hit me from across the room. Like, man, that feels so good that I got to make this beverage that's just made her day that much better. And that has not changed. I really enjoyed making coffee for you today, and it kind of, I still really get a lot of a kick out of sharing something so simple as making someone a cup of coffee. Obviously, over the years, a couple of opportunities presented, which was traveling to Origin, and that really, really threw fuel on the fire, which kind of, in a lot of ways, upset me. Some of the stuff that I saw, and that is what spurred me on to kind of do what we've been doing.
So you've got businesses now so you've got Proud Mary, which operates in Melbourne, Portland, Oregon, and Austin, Texas. And one question I'm curious of, because in one part you kind of are, but I'm not sure if I see you in this light. Are you an entrepreneur? Because I kind of feel like, and please don't take this the wrong way, but I kind of feel like you're a hobbyist who's made a business out of it, and your goal primarily is to have so much fun with it and look after other people through it. So how do you kind of balance that, one, being a business person, but two, kind of the artistry, because you're someone that gets on the tools and builds shit. You go in there and you still interact with customers. I was just with you, and going to Origin, and I'm pretty sure it's fair to say you've dedicated a lot of your life to making sure you give back to farmers.
And just before you jump in, just where you said artistry, I think just from you chatting before about your background, I think that has painted a way bigger picture for me of you and your business in the way that you do things. I think it kind of all clicked then and was a bit clearer.
Yeah, no, that's what was clicking for me a bit too, is like it is funny that sometimes we don't know who we are and we go about doing things, and there's some stuff we don't like doing, but we try and do it anyway. And really you should just lean into who you are and what you do enjoy doing and what excites you. And obviously art and creating things always excited me, and I really enjoyed that. And coffee became an amazing outlet for me to be creative. Same way that DJing and throwing dance parties was always something that I really enjoyed to do. It was creating a space and an experience. And then having a cafe or like restaurant, what a cool opportunity to create this experience for people. And I always saw like the door to the restaurant or the cafe was this, who knows who's going to walk through that door. And I have this opportunity to meet all sorts of random people that otherwise might not come into my life, and try and get on level with them and share this moment. And And so as time's gone by, like, the question was, are you an entrepreneur? Yes, I think so. But artist for sure. And maybe there's some things I don't like, the meetings, the online, the screen, I'm much happier out in nature, and aren't we all? But I think I've been trying to really lean into, and I spoke to this earlier, but doing Tai Chi, doing Qigong in the morning, what a great way for me to start the day, to just really be present and to really kind of drop all the bullshit that we kind of like carry with us a lot of the time.
Is that something you've had to kind of learn to be able to do? Because to preface this, I'm in a bit of a situation in my own life where I just work so much. We producing this podcast, booking the guests. Sometimes I can't keep up with it all.
Yeah,
and the cafe is getting busier, and you got your own family commitments and stuff like that. I'm kind of feeling the weight of that right now more than I ever have. Still love it. It's what I signed up for. I wouldn't change it for anything. But how have it? And this is something you can teach me and teach a listener. How have you kind of grown to be able to do that?
I mean, life teaches you that. I think, you hear people refer to midlife crisis, right? And really that maybe you should reframe that to spiritual awakening, or kind of like learning to really kind of find your place in the world, or where you sit, or what matters. And particularly like going through something like COVID that we all went through, that was an incredible opportunity for all of us to stop for a minute and reassess what we value and we like and we don't like. And I really wanted to slow down and to actually feel things. And I think, position that you're in right now, I remember very well. And I just, in those days, learned to harden up, toughen up, and push through it. And that got me maybe success in business, but that left me kind of not looking after myself and not feeling great internally. And eventually, after 13 years of running, that kind of caught up to me, man. And you can't run from yourself. And so I kind of had to really just stop and sit down and feel it all. And heavy kind of feelings as you process them. But really the trick for us, and this is particularly like for men, because we were not encouraged to be vulnerable with our feelings. And if anything, we were told not to, to suck it up and not to cry and, harden up and all that. And so it doesn't come easily for us often to share how we're feeling, and even to feel the feelings. And so, that feeling of like, man, I'm working really hard, I'm doing all this, I'm tired. Maybe you should have a rest. And maybe it's okay to rest, dude. Maybe it's okay to have sleep. And that job that you need to fix, that is like staring you in the eyes right now, and you feel shame over that it's not perfect, get it later. It'll still be there.
Yeah.
And so it's not like I don't care about what the goals that I've got I'm trying to get to, but I'm not going to whip myself to get them there anymore. I know that actually I can move faster if I slow down. And so I've kind of learned to take a breath and not beat myself up over things being perfect, because who are we trying to make it perfect for anyway? All that really matters, and particularly if you're an artist or you're trying to create something, you're the only person that needs to enjoy it. You need to be happy with it when you put it out in the world and let people say what they want to say.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter what anyone else thinks.
Do you have anything to add to that? Because I'm sure you own part of this business as well. Do you feel that as well?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's, I think for the last month, I've been working 13, 14-hour days, just, trying to get it off. And it's that tough thing where you own it's what you're saying. You own the business, you want the success, you have all the different people. Then you also have people like, depending on you for their pay and for their livelihood and all those kind of things. So it does build up that. But I've definitely in older years become a lot more self-aware. Beforehand, in my earlier life, it was always like you had to be the best and do the most. And, I was working crazy, like 80 to 100-hour weeks, like going everywhere, just going full tilt. And there's definitely been like a reset in my, 30s of like the things that matter and like what I'll actually want to achieve, what actually makes me happy inside and what I want to do. But it's hard. And I think to your point about talking about as, people or as men who are not in touch with those emotions or doing that, it's even beyond just like, it's like when people say to guys, get in touch with that emotion or whatever. It's like, I think we're trained so much to a point that we don't even know it's there. We've blocked it out so hard that we're like, no, you're stupid.
Totally.
I'm fine. And you don't realize you actually have to take that time for self, growth, healing, love, and all that to acknowledge that it's there and really understand it, because sometimes it can be really, really deep down.
It's probably easier to keep running at the time, honestly. It's quite a lot to turn around and face things. And if you look at addiction, really it's a way for us to distract ourselves from feeling.
Yeah.
And if you could just lean into the feeling, maybe you don't need the thing to distract yourself so much. Maybe you could just be present, you know?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. I think I once saw like Steve-O or whatever from Jackass, who was just like, you know, I wasn't addicted to the drug or whatever. I was addicted to running away from this thing here.
Sure, for sure. Yeah.
Well, I wanted to ask you next, Nolan. So your specific strength, I would have to say, and this is my opinion, you can correct me if you think I'm wrong. I feel like you've started cafes like Liar in the past, and then I think you've transitioned to this roaster, but green saucer really well. So you kind of live the life that I want to in the future, where you're traveling to Origin pretty regularly, judging Best of Panama auctions and all these sorts of things, buying coffee from here, there, and everywhere. What's that like for you now to travel to different origins and sort of have these relationships with coffee farmers, breathe that fresh air and kind of gain access to coffees through that sort of networking relationship style?
I mean, it's something that has always been a real guide for me. And when I'm not feeling connected to what I'm doing, or if I'm feeling a bit like, oh, this is too hard, or why are we here, you know, being at Origin or being on the farm or being with those people, connecting with the coffee at that level has always helped me kind of like, oh, that's right. That's what I have to do. Here's my job and here's the purpose. And we spoke earlier, I was just in Brazil for a Cup of Excellence, and it's been many years, since, particularly because of COVID, since I've been to Brazil. And that was one of the first places that I got to go on a panel, and I really wanted to lean into Brazil for Australia back in those days to really kind of like change people's opinions from red fruit, pulp natural being the only thing good that came out of Brazil. And in fact, yellow fruit naturals totally crush. And being back there and speaking with the people, I could really feel and see just how much it meant to them for us to be there, and the idea of us celebrating their coffee, scoring it well, paying a high price for it in an auction format, and then selling it at a high price. And it kind of, the future really depends on us growing that market. And so I really still love to do that for sure. I enjoy it. I have 2 kids and wife, and it's one thing that I really want to be able to balance and put probably like a lot more effort into, you know, and not build a lot for the business, but also really nice now to build some things for the family and for us, and to enjoy the time here. And so living in Austin, Texas, I'm 2 hours from Mexico, I'm 4 hours from Guatemala, it's a 5-hour flight to Panama. That's made that way more feasible and possible. Back in the old day, it would, how many countries can I do in three weeks, you know? And I would absolutely flog myself for 3 weeks to travel and see as many things as I can. So it's far more enjoyable now than what it was back then.
Now, do you have any interesting stories from going to Origin? Have there been any like interesting like cultural moments or something cool you got to do? I mean, Sonan was telling me when he was in Origin, he was in, I think, in Colombia, and he was like, "What? Oh, cute. You got all these guinea pigs. What are you doing?" They're like, "Oh, yeah, we're breeding those because they're a delicacy here and we eat them." And he's like, "I think I'll hold off on the guinea pig for today."
Yeah.
But that sounds pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, there is so much to learn from traveling and different cultures, and it is really cool. I mean, it is amazing that coffee itself grows in kind of like this very different life to where we grow it, very different to where wine shows up, for example. And we have a lot to learn. And I feel like as time goes by and we've taken so much from the planet, and you kind of start wondering, why is there a 100-year storm again this year? And we really need to go back to some of the ways that we did things. And a lot of that knowledge is there, some of the ancient wisdom that's around on how to kind of manage the land better. And so, I always enjoy seeing different philosophies, a way of thinking about, you know, how to get things done.
Yeah, absolutely. And you just mentioned you were in Brazil. So from what I know, you love Brazilian coffees, but I would say from my experience that they have to be one of the most underrated or misunderstood coffees in the world. And it's kind of, I think most coffee people just see it as like something to throw in a blender, like in you know, a coffee blend or whatever. But what do you think about Brazilian coffee?
No, you're totally right. And that is actually exactly how I kind of see it. And I think that is why I love them so much, is that I've come across, and me and Kirk were talking about it before, but he was asking my favorite coffees ever. And I scored 97 points in the Brazil COE five years ago.
97 points is borderline unheard of.
You know,
it's the Walter White of coffees.
I used that exact analogy before. That's like Gal Bedeker's crack versus Walter White's crack.
Exactly.
You know? Do you guys know Silvio Leite, a famous Brazilian kind of like coffee figure, but also producer? Melbourne coffee merchants would have his coffee, amazing coffees, and really just an incredible guy. He scored that coffee 100 points that year. And Kentaro Maruyama, who bought all the winning lots of COE for almost 20 years, almost from every country, 97 points as well. And it was something that we all felt very moved by.
What was it like?
It was so, like, I remember seeing it in colours, and I remember like the pink and white kind of fruit and a black spice note and just this fruit bowl, jammy, delicate, sweet, and so beautiful that every time I slurped it, I would choke up and a little tear would roll down, and I felt like having a cry. I'm like, oh my God, it's so beautiful. And that's when I knew, I'm like, well, I have to push the score up a bit further because I've never experienced that before, you know?
He is an artist. Look at that. Well, you know it when you start saying that I see things in color. That's when the true artists are coming in.
But it's almost like you get transported there when you have that kind of thing, and you taste something that's good. And, you know, we're coffee professionals, so we drink coffee for a living, drink it all the time, and then you have something that's like just a cut above it, like just significantly above everything you've ever had. It's like it almost takes you there. The journey from, you know, when it's planted to there. What was it? Was it a Bourbon? Do you remember?
A red Catuquai from. I was just in the same spot in Brazil. It's Alto Mogiana. Get the name of the town, but I actually got to hang out with the guy that produced that coffee this trip, and it was so nice to spend time with him and have a moment. From memory, the reason that this coffee, what stood out about it in the processing, he dried it down on patio to 14%, and then he put it in storage in wooden boxes for 3 months to let it kind of chill out and homogenize at 14%. And then he took it down and dried it down to 11% after resting for 3 months.
11% moisture?
Yeah. Which is I'd never heard of before. And
just for the listeners, what would be the normal processing? How does that differ?
Normally you would keep it on the patio or on the raised bed or in the dryer until it gets down to the desired content. And so you might get down to 11%. It'd be kind of like the equivalent of pulling the roast out a little bit early and then finishing it off later.
Popping it back in. I mean, do we need to do it? Have we done that? Let's do it.
I'm in chat with Ross Quayle, I'm pretty sure. Actually, no, it might be Peter Wolf, the dark arts, I think you'd call that.
Well, we're on it. And sorry, this is me just backtracking here because I just found it very interesting. When you were talking about seeing those flavors and colors, is that only flavors? Are there other things that are color to you, like sound?
I mean, 100%. Like, we were speaking to this earlier, and I do fully get this. I kind of see coffee's a plant, right? And ultimately, the best coffee on the planet is expressing its surrounding environment. And really, if you're wanting to judge or analyze coffee, to me, a form is no good. To me, I really need to be in a Zen state to receive what it's trying to say. And it can be a little bit of a psychedelic experience where I am like having feelings as well as like seeing things and having these kind of moments. And for sure, you get tasting notes, but I really don't feel like tasting notes accurately describe the experience. And so I have this desire to create artwork that helps express what the coffee is offering as opposed to just a note.
Some of the stuff that you're describing, like with the coffee, it sounds like something that would come from geisha. Like it.
Sure.
And that's what kind of flips the narrative on its head about Brazilian coffee, right? It's like you're describing a catuquai.
Yeah.
You know, no one would suspect that from that varietal.
Sure.
And so which is all the more surprising about it, I guess.
I think so. And I actually think Brazil has something to offer that you can't get from Panama geisha. And not that we need to ask more from Panama Geisha. It's freaking delicious. You know, you guys did an amazing job. However, Brazil has a different, you know, lens on that. And it has this depth and body and sweetness and creaminess that is just through the wazoo. And I love that. And I'd say the same for other varietals, you know, like Pacamara is something that I really think is underrated and can be incredible experience, you know.
With respect to geisha, it is something that I would say has had a huge influence on your career. You judge it, drink it, sell it a lot.
Sure.
How has it kind of shaped you, and why to people that might be listening to this for the first time or first meeting you, what is geisha and why is it so special?
I mean, really gave us it gave us an opportunity to look at coffee differently. It gave us an opportunity to sell coffee that was different. I remember the first time I think we would have been one of the first people at that time in Melbourne that brought in Panama Geisha, and the early days, Proud Mary, 2009, 2010, we went to visit the Hartmans, and I did a week-long course at the Hartmans with Will and Blue. And at the end of that, we were so impressed by this varietal geisha. We're like, hey, you need to sell us some, air freight it back to Melbourne. It finally landed, and my manager at the time called me. He's like, hey, Nolan, the Panama Geisha that you ordered just landed. Are you sitting down? What do you mean? He's like, sit down. Like, just tell me, dude. He's like, covered in mold. And the whole box was just like riddled with mold. And it had sat obviously on the tarmac in the rain, and it wasn't vac sealed in those days. I want to say it was a cotton, like a pillowcase. And so it was just fully ruined. And I called Alice Hartman, and obviously devastated. It was our first purchase of Panama Geisha, totally ruined. And they were so amazing to like, hey, don't worry about it. We're going to find something else for you. And they didn't have any more geisha. That was all they had in those days. And so she reached out to her neighbor, who happened to be Senator Teresa. I'm just going to send you some. And she sent us the Senator Teresa geisha, and it showed up, and we cupped it, and it was so mind-blowingly good. And I remember first customer selling that to on the bar, Proud Mary, and I put it on the bar, and I'm like, okay, imagine a bowl of Fruit Loops, a toucan bird, and a big giant fruit hat. There you go. And they have a little sip, and like, oh my God, what the hell? What is this? Like wizardry. And so it was very captivating, because we were blowing people's minds with this beverage. But otherwise, it wasn't like there was anything wrong with the amazing latte or a flat white. Great coffee. But this was a whole nother level, and a really moving experience for people, and a far higher price tag. And just those things that was interesting for me. What is coffee and why, you know?
I wonder if I'll ever get that. I mean, obviously you guys are probably drinking far more different coffees than I am, but like just getting back that experience of the first time, probably never again, you know, to have that. But I remember the first time like having those types of coffees and just being.
Do you remember what it was? The first thing that kind of like caught your attention?
The first one was just like, I was a kid. It was just like a Ethiopian.
Sure, I was going to say Ethiopia usually is the one that hits.
Yeah, that's normally the first one. And for, you know, people on the channel and that's the first one that I kind of recommend to be like, if you want to just step your foot in the door and see something that's like a little different than maybe what you used to, that's the way to go. So that was it for me. But I mean, I'm sure some of them would have been through Proudies, where I would have had a lot of those coffees.
The first geisha I ever had was that day when I first met you. You made me I think it was a wash figure Hartman. And it was I was kind of just like, oh shit, I thought I knew stuff, but now this is a whole new level.
I was just going to say a Hartman might have been.
Yeah, part of the bit about me moving to the US and what is working for me right now is that I'm still getting to have those moments. I feel a little bit like Peter Pan, because there are still people that just have absolutely no idea what they're walking into, and they see a high price tag and they're curious, and these coffees deliver. And so it's really fun to be able to kind of, again, grow that audience, you know?
I think I've told it on the pod, but one of the experiences that always stuck with me is, and I loved it even more, was there was a guy at the bar, was like a tradie, and he's like, I'll have a long black or whatever. And I'm like, do you want the blend or do you want our like single origin? It was like a Wahana estate or something like that. And he's just like, they're all the same. Who cares? And I was like, mate, trust me, it's not the same. And he's like, I promise you it is. I'm like, well, let me make it and we'll see. And I put it up and he tasted it and he was like, holy, he was like, but he goes, that is very different. It's like fruity in this. And he goes, and I bloody hate it. Can I have the other one? I was like, absolutely. But I love that there was still a moment of like
distinction.
Yeah. That he was like, at least like, I can understand now what you're talking about.
Yeah.
That's different.
Yeah. That's funny.
One more thing on geisha. I think we touched on, the world record price earlier, so I won't go too in depth on that again. But I think you had the, obviously the Black Jaguar last year. And I think something you should be incredibly proud of is the staff that you have at Proud Mary in Melbourne, because last year in February, I lost my mum. And one of the customers that came to Proud Mary and got one of the Black Jaguar coffees, they actually did a pay it forward. So they bought an extra lot and an extra cup, which is like $150 or whatever it was you were selling it for.
200.
Yeah, 200. And then your staff were able to nominate someone who would drink that. And so Brody, so shout out to her, sent me a message and said, look, we're going to make it for you. And it was an incredibly kind gesture. It was something I really needed at the time, going through that. But, I just wanted to make sure I give the public acknowledgement of, her kindness and how much that meant to me as well.
That's beautiful.
That's awesome.
It was really, really good for me at that time.
Yeah.
Very special.
Yeah. I mean, and really special coffee to share too, right? So I'm sure it hits in all sorts of different ways,
Yeah, and I got to share it with my sister who, obviously we were both grieving at the time. So it was just an incredibly kind gesture. And, I wanted to, thank Brody again and thank you guys for that.
Yeah,
so
that's awesome.
that was very kind.
What a powerful way now that cup now connects to you like forever in that way. That's
And I still got there was a card that I got, and I've got that framed at home as well. So it's, it's we'll get Brody on the podcast one day as well.
Yeah.
She's awesome.
Yeah.
So
beautiful. So you moved to the US, started Proudies over there. I was actually living in the US when you did it.
Oh, wow.
I was up at the Portland shop very early on in the days. Went and checked it out over there. It was great. So let's just talk about a few of those things, because I think that's something that people love. Like the first one, what are the biggest differences that Australian and US market that you've kind of experienced, or similarities as well?
Oh, there's some big differences. I mean, the size of the country, obviously, and the amount of people, and so the opportunities are great, and the growth is super interesting. That there's still so much growing happening in that market in the US. I would say that we probably rapidly grew in Melbourne in terms of education and what coffee is, and to the point that very quickly everyone knew what Panama Geisha was, what Margaripe was, what honey process was. I felt like we had a very savvy market very quickly. That feels like it's still developing, and I saw the sign at your place this morning that said no sugar and no syrups. And I mean, that would be a pretty ballsy thing to do in the States.
Oh, that's a coffee that we have sugar, but yeah.
Sure, I know, but it did make me think. I'm like, man, this is a statement that I could imagine. Like, you're coming in. Hey,
imagine that in the States.
Yeah, well, we don't offer syrup, for example. Like, we don't have syrup.
Because to a lot of people in the States, like vanilla wouldn't even be like a question. Like it'd be like, oh, can I get an iced latte? With the presumption that there's vanilla in it.
I get this every weekend with people coming from Queensland just staying at the hotel we're attached to. It's like, you got caramel? No. It's just every weekend. It's people from Queensland.
Yeah. And I mean, that could slightly offend someone, right? What do you mean I can't have my hazelnut latte?
Well, it's interesting that people think that like all cafes are kind of expected to have the same thing. And I kind of feel like, well, coming to Melbourne or coming to Austin, coming to Portland, it's like, you should try. It's kind of like going to Italy and trying a pizza. Just try the fucking coffee in the scene you're going to and enjoy it. But pardon me, you were answering a question.
No, sure. Yeah.
And I mean, also on that, there was, if we want to talk about, we're talking about the media early on in this with their interpretations of that. You got in maybe a little bit of strife for, I'm paraphrasing here, correct me what it is, basically on the lines of, I'm going to teach Americans how to have coffee.
There's a few lessons here. And like I said earlier to Kirk, like it really, everything's unfolding perfectly, permanently. So it is. And so things just happen and you have to kind of like see the positive in them and learn from them.
Yeah.
That was a broadsheet article that at the time was like, yeah, it made sense. It made sense what I was saying in Australia. And then for a US publication, pick that up and put a spin on it. And again, clickbait.
Yeah.
and hung me out to dry. And really what we're referring to is like a public shaming is what that kind of was,
Yep,
you know?
absolutely.
And that was a super hard entry. Not to mention the fact that it was 8 years ago, so the timing of the elections 8 years ago. It was an interesting time to move to the US. And so we had a rough start. And but at the same time, maybe that was the perfect thing that I needed to go to the level that I needed to for that space. I mean, you saw the Portland Cafe. I was so upset by that. And I didn't really quite know how to deal with or process it. I kind of thought I could just brush it off. I'll be okay. But internally it was like, fuck, what have I done? And yeah, I absolutely didn't mean what was the way it was said or how it was said. And I didn't see a point in trying to fight in media to make my point.
It's just what they want. Yeah.
Sure. And so it was like, well, I just have to prove myself and walk the walk, which I know how to do. But I went so hard in the paint into the build out and the furniture. I built all the stools, I built all the tables, I built the bulkhead. We kind of like just got so into the detail, and it really was me trying to prove that I was enough. And that was part of my undoing. And when I spoke before of the idea of a midlife crisis or a spiritual awakening, that was a big part in me kind of getting to a place where I'm like, whoa, I need to just stop and reassess what matters and what doesn't, and brush some of that stuff off. And tough experience, but like I'm better for it.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? You know?
Yeah, well, that's good.
Yeah.
And then, so you've got a shop in Portland and Austin, both very progressive cities, but differences there. Are you noticing a big difference? Like, is it kind of?
Yeah, I mean, I'm funny again in Austin. I wasn't funny in Portland. No one really got my humor. It wasn't really like landing. And Texas, the sun shines. People are really healthy and happy, and there's a lot of money in Austin. There's a lot of tech moving in there, so there's a lot of people that are looking for those experiences. And they're it's a very hospitality focused city. It honestly reminds me a lot of early days Melbourne, because you will amazing restaurant experiences, amazing like low end as well as high end. And so introducing what we do has been really well received and embraced, and the community loves it. And we're breaking records week after week. We just had a busier day last Sunday than we've had in any Proud Mary store ever, and it's really cool. It's only 2 years in, and it kind of it's exciting to be again sharing it with a new audience. You know?
Nice. And now over there, one thing that I found interesting when I moved over, do you still sell your coffee like for different brews? Like, is it filter and espresso, or is it blend? Because when I went over and I kind of asked that in the States, I remember being in like Sight Glass, and I was like, oh, do you have like just some filter coffees? And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, filter coffees. They're like, yeah, the coffees are there. And they're like, it's espresso and filter. Like everything, it felt like, was pretty much omni.
Yeah, okay. So you're referring to the roast pro. I was going to say, like, for sure, there's a language barrier, and some things that we kind of, it took us a while to realize they're not making any sense to the audience. You know, we had to change the language, but roast profiles for sure have become one thing, and I'm okay with it actually. And I kind of like was at first like, screw this. I need to teach them how to do a filter roast versus espresso roast, and so I made a amazing filter roast of an Ethiopian, and I sell it to a cafe in Portland, and I go to visit them, and I'm excited to go see them, and there's my filter roast in the espresso grinder, and there's my espresso roast, in the batch, and it's like, what the hell, you guys aren't getting it. And I very quickly realized I needed to really just give them something that they could do whatever they want with, because that is kind of like what's expected. And sure enough, it does taste really good when you get coffee in a good spot. It's in a good spot, and we've kind of learned enough now from how to make coffee that you also need to make it according to how it was roasted, and so you got to get it to balance. But that means maybe approaching the extraction differently, you know.
Yeah, and then last one on that: running a business, Australia, US. Which one you're picking? Which is better?
Well, I mean, it's kind of a hard market in Australia right now, and nothing against Australia. I love it here, and I love the people, and I love the culture, and I do miss living in Melbourne. But we're having a really fun time being in the US. Again, it's cool to meet new people and a new market, and the opportunities are kind of coming hard and fast, and that's exciting. Portland was super challenging city to run a business, especially through COVID. But again, that taught me a lot about our systems and how we go about things. And we now have a really tight kind of way of taking care of our people and our staff, and an awareness around that otherwise you might not have. And I think we're seeing that change in the market here more, and people are exploring who they are more, and that is been helpful to have that lens.
Have you ventured into any of the chains? Any Starbies for you? Any Dunkins?
No. But I know plenty of people that do. Like our chef in Austin loves to go eat like a dirty burger, and just kind of go for it. It is pretty funny. I mean, there is something to some of them. I mean, there's a taco chain in Austin that we eat at regularly because it's just that good. Coffee wise, though, I don't like, unlike the 8 coffees that you had today, Kirk. 1 a day is normally where I'm at for coffee, and I'm kind of cool with that. That's kind of why I
decided to, destroy me. That's right. I like that.
All right. What has been? You've done a lot in your career, and I know you're talking about being an artist. What do you reckon is the most rewarding part? What has brought you the most joy from your career?
Well, there's a lot. If I think of a couple of moments, getting to work with the Fat Duck and Heston Blumenthal, getting to make Heston a coffee and getting to explain what was happening. And that was like a really pivotal moment for me. And I got to, they flew me over to Bray, in the UK to work there for a week and to help them get settled after they spent 6 months in Melbourne. And it was such an honor to be a part of this place. And it's funny, we were talking about this last night at dinner, and we noticed, culturally, right, in a business, sometimes you'll get people that want to take what they can. And it's normal. We kind of like, well, what's in it for me? Right? And we take what we can from the business to kind of make sure we get our value out of it. That dark. And I showed up, and I'm there before service. And there is a guy delivering the carpet, another guy delivering the liquid ice. And I remember seeing these guys, just a delivery guy, but the way that they were holding themselves, the way that their attention to detail for rolling the carpet out perfectly, every single person that was contributing to Fat Duck was really trying to help make something special happen. I really love that. I'm like, guys, we got to kind of stop seeing what we can take from it. Why don't we see what we can make of it?
Yeah.
That's an interesting one. I actually, a really cool highlight of my career, again, I owe to you, because last year Bon Iver came to town and they contacted Proud Mary, and Brody actually asked me to come and help. So I got to make coffee and have dinner with and see the live performance of Bon Iver, courtesy of Proud Mary Coffee. Yeah. Do you ever see those guys over in the US?
Well, yeah, but I love that they're coffee nerds and they're into it, and I think it was great. It's really cool.
He's been in a cabin for the last 4 years, locked up, just riding away.
So they say. But allegedly the best coffee the singer Justin Vernon ever had was a Ethiopian CM roasted by you guys that was made by none other than Kirk Pearson. I'm just saying, lead singer Bon Iver liked my coffee more than ever. I thought that was pretty cool. I want to ask you as well, and we touched on one producer earlier on the day. Who are some of the most underrated coffee producers in your opinion? Because I was actually going to nominate Benjamin Paz, but you just said he's not really underrated anymore because he just won the Cup of Excellence again.
Yeah, he's a hero for sure. I mean, you do have to give a nod to Honduras. Those guys have really dug deep for so long to produce incredible coffee, and in such a humble setup, humble environment. And I really love, it honestly blew my mind when I went back to Honduras. It had been a long time just because we lost 4 years in amongst all that. And by the time I got back there, I'd kind of forgotten about some of the things that I had done years ago in Honduras that had influenced how they would go about processing, including some of the varietals that I helped them get their hands on. And to see a whole region like doing natural process and to a really high standard, and kind of like having adopted these new ways was really, really cool to see. And we visit there now, and they're constantly like, hey, what else have you got? What else can you bring us? And I'm getting to learn things at the high end of coffee. At the very top, those expensive coffees, they're not taken lightly. Like the guys in Panama take it very, very seriously about making sure they pull out every stop to make them as good as possible. There's learnings in that I get to share with places like Honduras that so cool to see them get a jump, on everyone else on like, what else could we do to improve what we're doing? And so, yeah, that's a place like that's really close to the heart for sure.
Any other underrated producers that you?
I mean, Brazil for sure. To your point, I don't think anyone's really seen what Brazil can do properly. And this is something that pisses me off. And I really think is like one of the biggest challenges for us in coffee has always been how we get coffee from origin to us. And when you travel enough and you fall in love with these coffees, as I have been, really heartbreaking when they show up and they're not there. And I'm like, oh, sorry guys, it was really an amazing coffee, and it showed up at not so great. And in transit, coffee does not like to travel, and it doesn't like to be moved around, and it does not like heat. And we don't have the best controls in place to move coffee around. And so not often that you land something from Brazil. Brazil and Mexico have the similarities in the sense that they a softer bean and they're a little bit more fragile, and so we kind of need to take them more carefully. But when we have landed those Brazils and they've shown up, it has been mind blowing. And so I kind of still have this hunger and desire to try and show just how good they can be. Are
you doing stuff to elevate that kind of shipping process? What happens along the way?
Can you tell me what you told me before?
Yeah, no, for sure. For years I've been like, what do we do? What do we do? And, we've done a bunch of different things, like a reefer, a temperature control container is obviously the best case scenario. But prices on that have gone drastically up. It's pretty hard to do. You also need a lot of coffee to justify a container. And when you're a small player, we're not really like as big a company as we might sound. We've spread out, but we're not about doing 20 ton a week. We're about doing quality.
Yeah.
And so we often would be sharing a container, and not often you get everyone to agree on splashing out the extra money. So in the pursuit of excellence and trying to get it to land in good shape, I've always been really interested in trying to keep it cool and to show that it can stay cool. And so Lost Origin, crazy mofos, and also share the same passion and desire for quality. Like, hey guys, what would it take for us to ship backpacked green from you in Panama to us in Austin and get it to us cold? How can we do it without it getting above 20 degrees Celsius? And not only that, put a tracker in it so I can show my customer, because I'm also going to put it in a freezer and I'm going to roast it and then keep it cool like a cellar and ship it to them with gel pack and get it to them cold. And the idea is really like being able to show that it has not been harmed in the process. And I'm very positive that that'll show up in the cup, that it's worth it. It's worth the pursuit.
You're going to tell me about Little Dryer? Well, that was the one thing that you did. So you managed to keep it stable, and then did it tasted significantly better when it got to...
To be fair, it's in the freezer.
Yep.
I haven't not opened it.
Okay.
And when I get back, that is like, number one.
We're going to need an update on that.
And cool beans is what we called it.
And wait, tracker. So you're tracking the coffee.
Yeah.
Is that just for the proof point, or have you?
And
I was going to say, have you ever been duped? Have you ever been like, hey, here's your geisha, and it's a...
No, we've been duped. Here's the thing. Data is money now, right? Like information is really important to us to be able to show that it's genuinely traveled in good shape. I think there's something to that, and there's value in that,
And wait, just as we're talking about keeping coffee cold and doing that, something we didn't touch on that people might have seen if they go into your stores. What's happening with the EKs at the top of the EKs? What's going on there?
So there's a freezer on the wall, and all other coffees are frozen, particularly roasted coffee frozen, and ground frozen, and yeah.
Can you elaborate on that for those who might not get what's happening there?
It started from a curiosity. This well, it kind of was a great way to get a better extraction for one, but also holy crap, we could keep the coffee in its peak for longer. I'm like, sign me up. And one of the things that made Proud Mary successful early on was the fact that we had a 1 kilo geisha and we could do these tiny little batches of expensive, special, rare coffees and not stress about the fact that it was only 500 grams and to try and move them in a 2-week period before they start to get old. And at $10 a cup or $15 a cup, it has to deliver. You can't like pretend it's there when it's not. And so that was always a way that we had 3 or 4 coffees on. But now that we can utilize a freezer, it's like, hey man, how many coffees do you want to have on? And so that's great. And then how do you implement that into a busy service? And I said to my wife, I'm like, hey, I've been thinking about this over and over. And the only way that I can see us landing a freezer and frozen coffee service into the cafe is if I put a freezer on the wall. You're not putting a freezer on the wall. That's ridiculous. I'm like, I'm sorry, but I'm going to put a freezer on the wall and I'm going to do my best to make it look good. And so it started in Portland and it was EKs under it and it was a ice cream freezer, cored holes in it. And I used the tightest grinding doses, EK doses. And I killed 3 freezers in the process of learning where you can and can't drill holes through a freezer, and found the right one. And sure enough, it just worked. And it was kind of like a bit of and this is true for us. We've often just have a go. It doesn't always work. You know, often it's
how you find out
a failure. Yeah, exactly. And then suddenly you get to succeed a little faster. Yeah.
I would encourage so many people that are listening to this to go ahead and try freezing your coffee at home. When we did it at Sub-Zero Coffee, and you came to one of the pop-ups we had after the World Barista Championship, and it's like you can have a menu of up to 100 coffees, and it's pretty manageable if you've got the right setup and you've organised yourself. But you can freeze it. You can freeze it to preserve it, and you can also freeze it to make it perform better as well. So one thing I've done previously in competitions is actually freeze my dose of coffee with dry ice. And the particle size is so much more uniform because you're shattering a more brittle bean, and so the extraction is actually so much better. Yeah. So there's many different ways you can.
And if you head down to Auntie Peg's, get on that reserved list and get some of those frozen coffees that are off there. You will not be disappointed. I used to do it every time before I went bouldering. I'd drop into Auntie Peg's and get myself a little sexy cup of coffee.
Do baristas in America rock climb a lot? Is an activity of theirs bouldering?
That's a good question. I can't say I've seen
because we had a hot take that went off on the social channels where we were saying, why does every barista also boulder and rock climb?
Basically, 75% of your staff do bouldering.
And the last question, just on the idea of you like freezing grinders and doing all that, is there any hints or is there anything that like you're touching on now that's like, what do you think's next, or what are you excited about next that could be doing things differently? Is it roasting a bit, taking it out, letting it rest and roasting it again? Or what do you think?
There's a lot that I'm excited about. For sure, I think, you know what? We just need to get stuff right. And I think sometimes we get so far into the arts that we forget about, how about you just get it right? And technology is really helping make that happen. And so example being stronghold roaster and electric instead of gas. And I'm not sitting here saying you can't make amazing coffee off 1950s Probat. I love them. But I also like the idea of carving out a new path and a new direction, and one that considers not burning gas, but also producing quality coffee. And in that process, it's been really cool for me to see that we can repeatedly get coffee in the right spot and get a really good result from it. And so using the data, the numbers, how we got it there and how well it was roasted. And I think that actually makes quality coffee. You know, you spoke this morning a little bit about like your own shop and what could I do? Oh, maybe I could get a link and maybe I could put something special on if I got small amount. 100%. Maybe someone at home could buy a link. Maybe it's not that out of reach. Maybe you could also buy the X Bloom studio and we could give you the link profile from Best of Panama and you buy the sample kit. And now you've got some of the best coffees on the planet at home on the link. And we could also share a recipe on how to brew it. And suddenly, for someone that knows nothing about coffee but wants to explore quality, it's so accessible. And it wasn't before. It had to be like a really big brand name, and some superhero coffee roaster does not need to be. And so I like that. I like how things shift around and change. And I think that's going to create opportunities for producers to also be their own brand, to not need someone else to champion them, to champion themselves.
We'll chat in a slightly different way. I remember chatting to both Anthony Douglas and Jack Simpson, and I was kind of like, I love this idea with certain automations with machines that someone could be making like the World Barista Champion coffee, and people all over the world could be dialing in that same coffee and having the same experience. And it kind of brings people together in that way that I think has never been able to happen before.
Yeah, no, it's pretty cool. I mean, and then if you think, where does that go? I mean, restaurants, hotels, home, there's so many different places that could be helpful.
One thing I wanted to ask you as well, Nolan, is do you think we're trying to make natural processed coffees too clean? Because I feel like one of the good things about natural coffees, and I get it comes in all shapes and sizes and it's going to vary country to country, yada, yada, yada. Do you think I don't like it when people push for naturals to be cleaner and cleaner. It's like, I kind of feel like you should embrace some of the bigger, bolder, more funky flavors from a natural at times.
I mean, what I would say is that I think we need to redefine what processing is. I don't think natural really, it covers too much ground. And now when I someone gives me samples and they're like, oh, it's a natural process. I'm like, is it though? Was it anaerobic fermentation? How long was it in there for? Because often there's a range. And so like a classic natural maybe is what you're referring to.
Yeah.
And I would say a classic natural for sure. And then I like that they've gotten cleaner, but maybe the washed with a bit of the right fermentation now tastes like a natural.
Yeah.
And so it kind of is it's in a way, I like that we've gotten on a rail and it's less experimenting and more control, but maybe you could be more specific about what you want and need and actually be able to get it. And so the idea of you saying, I want a natural that's got a bit more like the old natural to it, and that maybe that needs a little bit more fermentation for your taste buds to hit some of those notes that you're expecting from it. And maybe that could come from an anaerobic wash.
I just feel like there's a lot of people in coffee that kind of it's kind of like someone that votes for Donald Trump in a way. Like they vote for Donald Trump, but they don't disclose that they vote for Donald Trump. But it's like people, like a lot of baristas enjoy.
Excuse me.
But a lot of baristas actually enjoy a natural coffee, but they say they don't. It's like who was it on the podcast? Sure. Was it you that had your hot takes? Like people that say they like washed coffees or?
Oh yeah, that was Common Folk.
Sam. Yeah, his hot take was that people always say that I want
a washed coffee, but then when I want a wine, I want the dirtiest natural wine that tastes like an old footy sock.
Yeah. And I think they're just not real about it. It's like kind of like a cool thing to say, right, but they don't really believe that themselves.
I mean, it was kind of funny for me to move to the US because where I moved to, Portland, Oregon, particularly at the time, the bigger brands that were there were very much like, no to naturals. Naturals are bad. You can't have a good natural. They're all too funky, and it just wasn't true. I mean, it was once upon a time. Same way that like the first anaerobics that came around were just like really scary. You know, you didn't know what you're going to get. And they've gotten more control over them, and we've gotten kind of a rein on it. I think Brazil again is a great example of like people like, I don't drink naturals. And like, what about a Brazil? I'll drink a natural Brazil. I'm like, okay, so you do drink naturals.
So you're drinking naturals. Yeah. Now, look, I've loved having you on the pod. I feel like I've learned so much about you and got this like clearer idea of it. I kind of wanted to ask, now you said you started as an artist and then kind of got into coffee. So let's put in the art side aside. Right now, if you weren't to be doing coffee, what would be the thing that you'd want to go and pursue?
You know, I do really enjoy making things. I've kind of over the years realized that creative, you know, and visionary and like drawing something, coming up with an idea and then seeing it come to life. And so over the years, I started buying tools to help repair things in the shop. And then I'm like, well, maybe I could make that and maybe I could make it better if I get the right materials and do it right. And And so I started building furniture and I started making stuff. And then at one point, my wife, before I left Melbourne, was like, hey, I got you a birthday present. It's a Japanese joinery class. And it was a class to learn how to use hand tools to make things. And so frustrating at first because like 3 hours learning how to mark something correctly. And then now that has been so amazing for me. When I go to do something, I know how to do it to a higher level and to get it right. And there's something really satisfying about slowing down, taking your time and building things. And I like that kind of stuff will be around forever. You know, when we're gone, someone else could be appreciating the chair that they're sitting on or the table that they're at. The art's kind of in a similar realm. Music was always like that for me, you know, like getting to share music that we love with people. I feel like there's a bit of a theme for me and like the things that I like and versus what I don't, you know.
You need to do like a ultimate Nolan like kit where it's like someone gets a bag of coffee, the painting of that coffee, and then a table made out of leftover scrap wood from where that coffee was grown.
Yeah. I like this idea.
Yeah.
I really like it.
$14,000.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Tim.
And then the last thing that I wanted to ask, Origin, great. So many amazing stories, but, you know, things happen on Origin. Any horror stories? Anything interesting happen?
I mean, I've been pretty lucky, honestly. I've been pretty close to some like heavy moments. You know, there's been some shootings or whatever and strikes. When I used to go to Honduras early days, it was always the teachers would strike and shut the road down and they'd have to kind of like escort us away and stay in that restaurant until it passes and it might take 8 hours. I remember
it's a bit hairy. Is that?
It's a little hairy. Yeah.
Intimidating.
No, it is. And I remember like one of the first time I landed and went to the hotel and I went to the room and I put on the TV and it was the news and it was like a scene out of some kind of like fictional TV show. It was someone's head hanging from soccer posts.
Oh my God.
And I kind of like double take what I was seeing.
They just show that on the news over there?
It was just on the news.
Oh.
And it, you know, just the idea of that make you feel sick. It's not a very nice thought, but it kind of really reinforced where I was and what it was. And the other one might be Africa. Africa is really, it's heartbreaking. Burundi was really heartbreaking to see just how little they have, how challenging it is versus the palaces that exist. And I got to be careful saying what I'm saying. And like being Australian, we have the freedom to say what you want when you do, and you kind of get away with it. And I was speaking to someone at the airport about what I had seen and how I felt about it. Someone tapped me on the shoulder and like, you can't say that here, right? You don't have the freedom of speech here. You could go to jail for that right now. Someone could come take you away. And so it was kind of like, oh, that's right. I need to kind of remember where I am, you know.
Interesting you should say that. The gentleman that dropped me here in Uber was from Ethiopia and he said there's like limited freedom here. And, kind of reinforces what you just said. Limited freedom there.
Sure.
Because and we had Daniel from Magao on earlier in the year and it's like, political views like,
sure.
can get you into trouble.
For sure. Yeah. Which you take for granted, right? You don't realise that, but yeah, it's absolutely the case.
Last question within the questions on the pod is name one person dead and one person alive that you would like to have coffee with.
And it'd be kind of cool to have coffee with Bowie. I think Bowie was pretty cool, man.
David Bowie.
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool.
What a dude. And like amazing musician, an artist. Live. Who do I want to have coffee with?
You saying Bowie made me think of Barry Gibb from the Beatles. He's still alive, but damn, it'd be awesome to have a coffee with him.
Sure. Alive who I need to have coffee with, but that's a good question. Yeah.
Trump.
Probably not.
It'd be interesting.
It would be.
It'd be interesting.
Well, you can, if that comes to you later, we'll answer it. But I guess we'll get into our next segment. Now, we covered the hospital horror story. I guess we'll take your origin stories as the horror story. But we like to have this last segment is the extra hot take with 2 sugar section.
That's the first time we've ever just run into it by saying it. Normally there's a whole song and dance where we're pretending it's hot and we're,
Well, yeah, sorry. Should we try again? I'm getting a bit fucking.
Oh
sweaty,
man, wait! You were in an airport, and they were saying that you could go to jail. That story is getting me a little hot under the collar. I think it's time for an extra hot take with 2 sugars. Which I love that thing. We've just talked about it. It's just never happening. Now it's almost becoming a joke that we're just going to stick with that. I was just saying, after we yell extra hot take with 2 sugars, I feel like we need something a little more oomph, like just someone going, oh, it's hot,
Right.
Nolan's like, sure.
Would you like to go first today?
Yeah, sure. I can go first with my hot take here. So with all the advancements with coffee gear, grinders, machines, I think the manufacturers need to realize you still have to make these machines for idiots. I feel like we're going so far, and it's good. We need to have these tech advancements and that kind of stuff. But there's so many machines breaking down and falling apart and not working not because the machine's bad, but because the end user isn't using it properly. And I think we need to remember that how many cafes are there everywhere where they're not going to be cleaning it every day. They're not going to be taking it apart and meticulously, removing every section and cleaning it all. You still need to make sure that these machines are made for anyone that can use them in a cafe. Thoughts? You guys have expensive machinery?
I agree with that. I think that maybe that's exactly what the restaurant industry needs. It's just a solution that works and gets you there. And it's okay to have the help to get it there. It doesn't need to be a fully skilled, trained person to do it. It could just be the right piece of equipment.
Yeah.
With regards to this one, I think you really do need to make it with the end user in mind. I feel like Lamassus has probably done this best of the coffee machine manufacturers. It's got the best interface to be able to actually use easily, whereas some of the others, you can turn the machine off easily during service. I've had before, not always the easiest to program them. I feel like you're 100% right, Rohan, and even at home as well. So you could generally make things easier than you currently do.
What's your process with your coffee gear at the end of every shift at Project Zero Coffee?
Well, we clean the coffee machine like most baristas usually would, back flushing, removing the shower screens, giving it all a good clean, getting really up there in beneath the shower screen with getting some of the dirt and grime out. And with the grinders, we have to pull those apart. I think there's some things with flatbed grinders, you just can't avoid cleaning them thoroughly daily yet. But I think, grinders where you have a clump crusher, I don't understand how that works, but if they could bypass that in the future so you don't have to replace them all the time or don't have them clog things during service. The Mazaroba was probably one of the most durable grinders that just keeps going and going and going. It's kind of like the Toyota Land Cruiser of coffee grinders. But I 100% agree, Rohan. I'm going to go next with my hot take, and my hot take actually came to me. So you might have seen me on the phone there earlier. I was just connecting it to Bluetooth to play my hot take. Do you remember breakfast shirts?
Yeah.
So we had there's a guy called Breakfast Shirts, Mark Crotty. He came on the podcast. Really, really nice guy. Sent someone to my cafe today. He sent someone to the cafe that I've seen on Instagram before. Got quite a big following themselves, called Russ Eats.
Anyway, Russ Eats is in the house.
Russ Eats is in the house, but he's posted
and for those who don't know, Russ Eats kind of does reviews on what, just any kind of.
Well, let's play a little bit of one now.
Okay.
Thanks, Mark, you fuckwit. I've got a runny bum and you send me to a cafe without a fucking shitter on site, which should be illegal, by the way. Anyway, cheers.
Anyway, Russ Eats, we have a toilet. All you have to do is ask where it is. Okay, so that's my extra hot take with 2 sugars. If you get to come and roast us for not having a toilet, at least ask where the goddamn thing is, because we have a toilet. I'm sorry you found yourself in that position. You must have had a fair few coffees like Nolan did to me today. Just saying. My extra hot take with 2 sugars, ask where the toilet is. Thanks, Russ. And thanks, Breakfast Shirts. I thought you'd have my back.
Where's the review from Russ Eats? Normally he's reviewing they've got extra hot twisties with burger flavoring.
Yeah, I don't know. But
get him in there doing your bloody, what co-ferment have you got going this week?
a few. But I agree with him. If you don't have a toilet, that's borderline illegal in a coffee shop.
Just quickly, what do you think of the co-ferments?
Oh, yeah, true. Hot take. Incoming.
What I said earlier was
pretend he's not here.
Be honest about it. Yeah. It's more when they're not disclosed that winds me up. And they are slightly different things. And so be clear about it, state it.
Yeah, and I mean, it makes sense that Kirk wants to get into co-ferments to tap into his Italian roots where they invented co-fermenting and they loved Delici espresso back in, the 1950s. So, yeah.
Is it actually?
No.
Okay. Oh, cool, Mike. Nolan, have you got an extra hot take with 2 sugars that you'd like to point down the barrel?
I mean, I would say for me, it's about where does it come from? Where does your product come from? What are you consuming? And maybe drawing a bit of a line in the sand. I think one thing that we forget is that we are, it's all one thing. And what we consume, particularly notice this moving to the US, if you're not careful about it, is kind of like easy to poison yourself and wonder why you need medicine and you need all these things to get better. And so paying more for clean eating, clean living, and particularly like with reference to coffee, knowing where it comes from and understanding where it comes from is going to become more and more important, because there is a line that we can't see in the sand that one side is causing a lot of problems and damage to the industry and to the longevity. And while it's nice to be on this end of it and have blinkers on and kind of enjoy our lattes, may actually be better for all of us if we understand better where it comes from and be on the side of that line that is going to make a difference, and regenerative farming and put back into the people and to the land. And so choose wisely. Maybe I think the answer to that would be maybe you don't need 3 cups of coffee a day. Maybe just drink one really fucking good one and pay for it. Loosen up, pay well for it, and enjoy it. And stop scrimping, because it's helping no one. It's making it worse.
Yeah, we had a great big discussion about this earlier. It's like the entire coffee industry is really at risk, and we're going to be at a point probably in the next 5 to 10 years where you'll have no choice. You'll be paying more for coffee because there will simply be less of it to purchase. Oh. We all know the laws of demand and supply. As supply goes down and demand's ever increasing for coffee, that means prices are going up, people.
And also, we'll start losing the good coffees if other countries are actually going to pay what they should for them, and then we're going to be left with nothing.
Well, yeah, and if you're disincentivizing farmers to grow it and there's not a new generation of farmers to produce it, then we're in serious trouble. You got the compounding problem of the climate change and that, but also just like less people growing it. That's an issue.
It's kind of happening. Like I said earlier, a lot of the people that would normally pick the coffee cherries, the younger generation, realise that there's nothing in it and have left, and they walk to the US to try and find other jobs. And we were seeing like award-winning farms with no one to pick the coffee cherries. And so it will get harder to get some of those really special coffees, and just general coffee will go up in price.
Well, I got to say, what a pod. That was one of my favorites.
Yeah, that was
one of my favorites. I do want to say, before I say thank you, I want to say, is there anything else you want to say to the people? Is there anything else that's just sitting in your heart that
I would say that thank you for supporting us for 15 years. We're really stoked that we've been able to come on this journey and do what we've been able to do. And it's really because of the support from everyone that has made it happen. Really feel really grateful, and I feel blessed that I get to work with coffee. It's such a cool industry, and I hope to continue to make a dent in the industry and do something good with it,
So if people want to come and enjoy the fruits of what you're talking about, so they can do in Collingwood here in Melbourne, they can go to Portland in Oregon, Austin in Texas, Pratt Mary.
If you do all three, there's absolutely bragging rights.
That's do they get like a punch card? One free coffee if they do all three.
Yeah, get the golden ticket award.
Yeah, you do.
Like that.
Well, I want to say thank you, for coming onto the pod. Thank you for what you've done for the coffee industry. I was a young buck when you were kicking off Proud Mary and doing that, and it's really influenced and shaped me along that journey as well. Congratulations on 15 years. That's a huge accomplishment. You should be very proud.
Well, and I'm gonna leave you with a bit of a pull on the heartstrings here. You're one of my coffee heroes. So it's one. It's an honor. It's an honor to be able to have you on the podcast and to consider you a friend. And I look forward to what we spoke about earlier when I meet with you in Panama and we get to go and kick back with some farmers and just enjoy the fine things in life.
Well, appreciate you guys. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Nolan Hirte of Proud Mary Coffee Roasters. And on that note, we shall...
Peace out.